I'm Tim. I'm Tim Willis. I'm one of the Associate Directors for International in BBSRC, and I'm here to guide you through the next hour and a half. As usual in these webinars, it's our opportunity for BBSRC to give you updates on a few highlights that we're working on, but also the opportunity for you to ask us questions. Thank you to those who have submitted questions in advance, but do use the Q&A function on this meeting if you have questions as they arise during the webinar. So we're first going to hear from our Executive Chair, Professor Anne Ferguson-Smith, and the two topics we wanted to update you on in this webinar are updates on the responsive mode evaluation and reform, and also then we will hear from colleagues on our support for fellowships. We will then leave time for you to ask our executive team your questions, so do use the Q&A function, and thank you again for the questions in advance. Your questions in advance did help us shape this webinar, and we hope that we will cover the topics that are of interest to you. I have a few housekeeping. Please be aware that we will be recording this webinar in totality, and it will appear on the BBSRC UKRI website. So do tell your colleagues if they missed today, they can catch up with it later. We also are using Zoom because we have closed captioning enabled. You can use the closed captioning function at the bottom of your screen to turn it on or off as you wish. You will be muted and we cannot see you, but we can see your questions and we can see who's here in the participants. Please do not limit your questions to the two topics we have selected. Do ask us questions about the totality of BBSRC. We do welcome your views and questions from all areas of the bioscience community. So I'm going to start by obviously introducing our Executive Chair, Professor Anne Ferguson-Smith. Over to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this year's community webinar. As Tim said, this is an opportunity for you to hear more about our strategies and priorities. And also, as he said, you'll hear about what we're doing around the evaluation and reform of responsive mode and our support for fellowships. But really importantly for us, it's an opportunity for you to tell us what you think. We are listening. And during the webinar, there'll be opportunities to interact with us and share your views. So I'd like to start by talking about some changes at a UKRI level. As you're probably aware, BBSRC is part of a wider UKRI family alongside 8 other cross-sector and disciplinary councils. And we're working very closely together developing our strategies and priorities going forward and delivering cross-council funding activities in addition to the ones that BBSRC are championing. And at the end of August, we welcomed our new Chief Executive Officer, Sir Ian Chapman. Ian is a physicist who was previously Chief Executive of the Atomic Energy Authority, and he's been in post for less than 2 months. However, it's very clear that he's committed to a highly outcome-focused approach to our role within the UK research and innovation ecosystem. So in this context, and with our new CEO and executive chairs from the councils working together, we think about the research and innovation system and our contributions to it going forward, probably in a more holistic way than before, with an investment portfolio that supports a research and innovation system delivering multiple benefits locally, nationally, and globally via what our Science Minister, Patrick Vallance, has described as 3 buckets. And these are the new discoveries from excellent curiosity-driven research, which absolutely underpins our direction of travel. And UKRI, as Ian says, is the guardian of curiosity-driven discovery research and always will be. It's the foundation of what we do as an organisation, and that's Ian Chapman's words. It's also associated with the formation and success of innovative companies as we promote them scaling and growing across the UK, but also delivering better outcomes for society, both nationally and, of course, globally. And at the core of this investment, at the heart of this, is our investment in people, our investment in research and innovation infrastructure, and our investment in critical technologies. And since his appointment as CEO, Ian has really spoken publicly about UKRI and its priorities for us as an organisation, as a guardian for curiosity-driven research, as I've said, and to amplify and accelerate the impact of our UK researchers. So how are we funded? So if you aren't already aware, UKRI is a non-departmental public body sponsored by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Spending decisions made by Treasury determine our funding allocations to DCIT and ultimately to UKRI, which is just one of DCIT's partner organisations. And we are currently involved in a two-phase spending review. Phase 1 allocations were announced in April, a one-year settlement for 25-26 budgets, and allocations to councils were published in July, which can be found on our website. UK's overall allocation for this year has been 8.8 billion, with BBSRC receiving a core budget allocation of around 326 million, plus on top of that, a series of additional funding that takes our overall allocation to a little over 600 million. It's important to note that actually the outcomes from phase 2, which is a multi-year settlement up to 2930, were announced in June, setting department level budgets, and we're now working closely with DCIT to confirm UKRI settlements and the allocations within them. Of course, our work is aligned with government ambitions and the government's industrial strategy. This is taxpayers' money, and we are the largest public funder of research and innovation, aligned with the distribution of taxpayers' money. And therefore, our narrative is very much associated with working with government. And the structure for this is based around the government's new industrial strategy, a 10-year plan that promotes business investment and growth. It focuses on 8 sectors that have the greatest growth potential over the next decade. And bioscience, I have to say, is fundamental to this ambition. And BBSRC's work weaves through many of these industrial strategy sectors. In particular, in advanced manufacturing, in digital and tech, engineering biology is one of 5 major components of the digital and tech industrial strategy. And of course, life sciences, where our work on improving health and well-being, food security, food to health plays a critical role, although we have, of course, roles to play in several others. So this leads me to BBSRC's vision and our refreshed forward look for UK bioscience, which we published in the summer and was developed through broad and deep consultations with you, the community, and with other stakeholders across the ecosystem. And many, many thanks to those of you at all career stages who have contributed to these consultations. It's been really, really useful and actually really interesting. And this forward look really articulates an ambitious vision, I think, to harness the power of bioscience to deliver a healthy, resilient, and sustainable future. A future where people and animals have healthier lives, where everyone has access to safe, affordable, nutritious food. A vision where environment and ecosystems are enhanced rather than degraded by human activity and reliance on fossil fuel-based resources. We have greater disease preparedness and resilience, and our economy, of course, grows in innovative yet sustainable. So it's a long-term vision, and it will underpin the next phase of our strategic delivery plan that we'll be working on. It provides a foundation for our input into spending reviews and funding allocation processes. So in our forward look, we have set out this ambition that focuses on 3 interconnected broad research priority areas. That's healthy people, animals and plants, sustainable agricultural and food systems, and a resilient bioeconomy. These are designed to address the key global challenges where we really believe that bioscience can realistically offer solutions around climate change, infectious diseases, and of course, aging populations. And the three important components that are underpinning this, through which we will achieve this ambition, involve, of course, catalyzing discovery. This is our commitment to curiosity-driven research, applying innovations to real-world change, targeting discovery outcomes to the right places for the right purposes, and importantly, creating and deploying transformative technologies, a toolkit that will unlock advancement. And I'd like to say a little bit about these three priority challenges for us. Of course, as you know, curiosity-driven research drives the progress through knowledge and understanding of biological concepts, and is something that we in BBSRC are, I think, renowned for championing and continuing to commit to, given the connectivity of our fundamental bioscience advances and contributions that they make to multiple other disciplines, including those outlined in the industrial strategy. We are committed to, of course, maintaining the UK's research base, its capacity, its capability, and its agility in key bioscience areas. And of course, in this digital age, this involves actually high-quality data generation and data usage. And on the schematic on the right, you can see over the past 15 years where our responsive mode funding has gone in this sort of bubble chart at the side here. You'll see in red cell sciences, and in green plant and crop sciences, and in blue protein sciences, structure, alternative proteins, etc. Neuroscience up there in yellow top. And we do this through our responsive mode allocations. We do this through strategic longer and larger projects. We have we're very excited actually about these Pioneer Awards. A recent innovation in our funding portfolio, the last one supported 62 early stage, high risk, high reward projects, and planning for a second call is underway. And of course, we're also supporting community research networks. Projects funded this year include the new Investigator Obesity and Metabolism Network, expansion of the Food Safety Research Network, and various others. So that's curiosity-driven research. Applying innovations to delivering real-world change, I want to emphasize that although the political agenda is very much around economic growth, we also have a responsibility to address global challenges, which bioscience is uniquely placed to address. And the specific areas where biosolutions will play a key role are around climate change, resource depletion, biodiversity loss, food and nutrition security, and infectious diseases. Creating industries of the future by changing how we produce food, being creative about industrial biotechnology, chemicals, medicines, materials. And of course, working with partners to support and promote bio-based solutions around establishing a resilient, sustainable, biodiverse agri and food systems, reducing the burden of diet-related ill health to individuals, the NHS, and the economy, enhancing UK biosecurity to protect civilians and livelihoods from impacts, including infectious diseases, and commitments around decarbonisation, zero emissions reductions. The creation and deployment of transformative technologies has always been high on our agenda, as you know. And here, this is about ensuring the responsible creation and deployment of tools to really enable these biosolutions. For example, the secondary legislation to implement the 2023 Precision Breeding Act, which comes into force in November, is a really significant step forward in the implementation of the transformative technologies that the bioscience community have been contributing to over the years. Supporting the convergence of bioscience with data accumulation, engineering, and AI to transform research practices. And we're currently developing an AI for bioscience strategy that's sitting within the work that we're doing across UKRI, across councils on a refreshed UKRI AI strategy. And particularly for us, opportunities at the interface between AI and engineering biology have been part of these discussions. Transformative technologies, well, we're very proud actually to be leading on the National Engineering Biology Programme. Engineering biology being the design, construction, and deployment of biological systems. And this is really has been a major strategic priority for BBSRC for decades. It was called something else in the olden days, and it's evolving into a bigger and even more impactful part of our national research ecosystem. And it's one that resonates very closely with the themes in our forward look. And it's, as I said earlier on, one of the government's priorities sitting in the digital and technology sector plan of the modern industrial strategy. So UKRI, led by BBSRC, is driving our leadership in engineering biology through the National Engineering Biology Programme. We're investing in major programs around food systems, biomedicine, clean growth, and the environment. And also in skills development, in infrastructure, and in international collaboration to deliver a greener, healthier, more resilient future. For me, actually, it's been a really impressive example as I've come into UKRI as I think it's actually the most successful partnership across the different councils with really sincere, effective interactions between BBSRC, Innovate, MRC, NERC, and government departments too. So BBSRC, I think, are really leading the way in new directions of UKRI working together in the engineering biology programme. It's really a great example. There are some, actually missing a slide, but nonetheless, there are several examples of how we're doing this. These include, in particular, the Mission Hubs and Awards funded through the Technology Missions Fund, which is now in its second year. And we had the second annual showcase in Manchester of the Engineering Biology Programme last month. There are other further investments supporting skills and innovation in engineering biology, the EngBio BioCure Discovery Programme, an EngBio Accelerator, and of course the Doctoral Focal Awards in EngBio. The call ran this year, and the outcomes will be formally announced shortly. So we have key commitments at the heart of this to people, infrastructure, and routes to impact. We would be nowhere without our investments in people, in infrastructure, and routes to impact. And in that, and here we have our goal to create a skilled, or to continue to create and invest in a skilled, diverse, resilient workforce. Continued investment in the kind of infrastructure that we need to maintain this. And routes to impact, which is accelerating the translation of bioscience research and innovation, reaching the right partners. So just to say a little bit more about that. In terms of our people, they are at the heart of the research and innovation system and a cornerstone of actually both BBSRC and UKRI strategies. And our refreshed forward look really reinforces this. Training, upskilling, reskilling, creating diverse and actually more creative, permeable, porous career pathways. And actually also encouraging our early career researchers and others to have the courage to take more courageous approaches in the career pathways that they move through. We continue to support the Doctoral Training Focal Awards and our Doctoral Training Landscape Awards. You're going to hear more about our BBSRC fellowships and our forward-looking thinking around that direction of travel. And flexible talent mobility accounts, again, that come back to this idea of increasing mobility and porosity and generating more diverse experiences for our researchers in bioscience. And championing research culture. We have a Connecting Culture Fund, which enhances EDI in our BBSRC funded networks. Infrastructure, of course, shaping world-class bioscience ecosystem that is fit for the future really involves individual laboratory and distributed infrastructures and significant national capabilities. Although I have to say we're looking hard to encourage more sharing and connectivity and networking amongst these infrastructures to provide that added value that are of benefit to more and more people. Our National Engineering Biology Programme has invested in major infrastructure investments, including our national hubs. Through AI and the bioscience, we're also enhancing connectivity, collaboration across disciplined sectors and actually also internationally, in particular through our work on the national data infrastructures that involve EMBL-EBI, those international infrastructures, and also internally, nationally, BioFair. We continue to support essential research and commitment through our alert calls and through nodes of international infrastructures such as Eurobioenergy. And we continue to develop cutting-edge research technologies through our responsive mode and other platforms. Routes to impact. So this is really about fostering connections and enabling partnerships, leading from discovery to adaptation, to application and implementation. So this is enabling this end-to-end connectivity across the ecosystem, co-creating strategies and solutions with national and global partners. One of the most interesting investments the government has made, which we just actually, there was a call started this week, is the Local Innovation Partnerships Fund, which is really aimed at that end-to-end connectivity in regions, and there are key priority regions the government is investing in with fixed amounts, in addition to a competitive call more widely around the country, really playing into our commitment to the place agenda and to ensuring that there's a continued investment in our regions. And UKRI have oversight for this Local Innovation Partnership Fund. And in fact, all the councils are sitting around the table and engaging in that process. So, of course, fundamental to our forward look and our strategy is working in partnerships with others. This is a really important component of what we do. This includes partnerships with universities, with other research organizations, other funders, with industry, with multiple government departments, not just DCIT. And from a BBSRC perspective, DEFRA is a very close partnership with DEFRA. Working with the third sector and end users of research. And together we are co-designing and co-delivering the enabling pathways. Of course, BBSRC supports 8 theme-focused institutes embedded in 5 innovation campuses, enabling these growing bioinnovation clusters that capture the highest quality research innovation into startups to enhance scale-up, to accelerate impact. So we hope to continue to provide leadership in this partnership way of working, and to work with the wider community going forward. And actually, I spend quite a bit of my time engaging with partners, trying to enhance, deliver these ambitions. I'm going to stop here. I just want to say a little bit about the current things that are on my mind, that are my day-to-day activities, very much involved with spending review allocations relating to bioscience, working across councils on joint activities. I'm actually, on behalf of UKRI, leading an Institutes and National Capabilities review. We have a large number of institutes across all 9 councils within UKRI. And we haven't before taken a holistic view about how they connect together and learning from best practice within them. And that's been a very exciting exercise that's allowed me to engage with the wider institute community across UKRI. We've been visiting our partner universities, institutes, engaging with other partners, as I've already mentioned. Of course, continuing to develop and invest in our skills-based and new talent and infrastructure. Those are part of business as usual, actually. And you're going to hear about some of the internal projects that we've been driving in the last year since I've come into the role. That's the responsible review, which Jef is going to talk about, and the strategic review of our fellowships, which Aidan is going to tell us about. But for me, the three underpinning threads that run through this is really ensuring that we support the highest quality research in the biosciences and biotechnology space across the UK. We're more than just a funder holding the purse strings. We want to co-create, we want to work with you to really enable that national bioscience ecosystem to thrive. We're listening to your ideas, and we want to work together to nurture and enable and support. And then very importantly for me is, and actually going forward, given the fiscal challenges that we're facing, really incentivizing and motivating that connectivity that increases effectiveness, increases efficiency, and provides that added value that working together in this tiny country provides. And I'll stop there, of course. But I thank you for your attention. I thank you for being here. And I pass over to Jef. I will stop sharing.
Bear with me, I will just attempt to share my screen. I check that you're seeing the right screen now.
Yes, we are.
Okay. I'm going to give you an update on something which I talked about at the webinar this time last year, for those of you that were present there, on evaluation and reform. And just a quick recap as to why we're doing this. That our current responsive mode system, including the current committees, are now over 15 years old. There have been many developments around operational refinements since then, but on a overarching level, not much has changed in that time in terms of the way we deliver our responsive mode. It is our biggest core funding commitment, about a third of our core research budget, as Anne mentioned, and we have protected responsive mode in lean times. Nevertheless, the core funding which we receive is a smaller proportion over time of UKRI's budget, so this is a pressured budget. We haven't systematically reviewed the scheme in that time, and as we have a number of drivers for potentially evolving the scheme, we felt it was really important that we had an evidence base on which to feed into that.
Right.
Those drivers, the responsive mode system is under considerable pressure, and this is mostly felt by the research community. This is not unique to the biosciences. All parts of all disciplines are experiencing this, but we need to respond. And although we have many success stories to point to, there is a perception that we hear from the community that we could be doing better, in particular at soliciting and supporting the most transformative research ideas and importing best practice from other funders where they are perceived to have it. Alongside this, UKRI has a simpler, better funding programme, which is aiming to deliver harmonisation of our schemes and the way we deliver our schemes across UKRI to simplify what is currently a very complicated offer to the community, and meaning that you can transfer ideas and grants across the system in a more seamless way than currently. That also is impacting the nomenclature. In the future, we won't be talking about responsive mode, but rather applicant-led mode, for example. So we are now in the thick of another responsive mode evaluation. This is probably the largest evaluation we have ever done, and I'll give you some figures to support that in a minute. And it is being delivered in multi-parts. We have in-house capability to look at our grants portfolio data, not just the funded portfolio, we're also looking at the unfunded portfolio and looking at differences between the two, which is interesting. This will be supported by a community consultation to test views and perceptions. And then we're expecting to do some external data analysis as a kind of part two, using kind of data sources that we don't have the same access to. And this will be stitched together by an independent panel that will look at the evidence and provide us with some thoughts on what that tells us. However, we are intending to draw on the interim outputs in a dynamic way, simply because time is marching on. So just to give you a flavour, we're looking at inputs and outputs. This is very much work in progress. These numbers may change as we refine, but just to give you an idea of the scale of what we're talking about, over the 15-year period, we've invested over £2 billion in responsive mode grants. That's a huge amount of money, but it's much smaller than the amount of money we have been asked for, which is more like £9 billion. We've received nearly 19,000 applications, 4,500 of which have been awarded. So that gives you a sort of scale of the portfolio we're looking at and the reason why we need to know what's in those boxes. We're also looking at outputs, and this is just a top level kind of teaser really of some of the data that we've immediately been able to extract, which is there are 17,500 journal articles which have been published between 2015 and 2024, which can be linked to our responsive mode grants. The one I will draw your attention to is that 22% of articles which are linked are in the top 10% of their subject area, and nearly half of articles rank within the top 25%, which gives us an indication of how the portfolio is performing against other funders. So we're looking at other outputs. We're looking at what institutions we're funding across the geography of the UK. We're looking at partnerships in that as well. We'll be looking at different science areas funding we've funded, including emerging topics and versus other forms of support, for example, through our institutes and through managed mode or targeted mode forward. We'll be looking at benchmarking citations, areas of particular strength, gaps and USPs. And just as a teaser, one area that has immediately popped up as being performing very well is our plant science portfolio, which is an area of USP for BBSRC. So that's nice to hear, and more on that as we refine our data. And we'll also be looking at other forms of outputs in terms of collaboration, spin-outs, and the influence on policy and practice. Importantly, next week we will start to ask your views. There are a series of linked community surveys that we are expecting to launch next week. This is being led by an external agency, so we don't mark our own homework, and will include surveys which are aimed at current and previous grant holders. If you are a current or previous grant holder, you should receive a communication that asks you to complete that survey. We are also, perhaps controversially, asking applicants who have applied to us but have never been awarded a responsive mode grant as to your perceptions for our scheme, and we think that would be an interesting subset of data. And then we are also have an open consultation that will be linked on the website, which is to encourage members of the academic community in particular who are bioscientists but haven't applied to BBSRC for their views. So if you are a bioscientist but you've not put in a grant responsive mode, we would like to know why. And we will be following up with a series of one-to-one interviews and or roundtable discussions. We'll be soliciting your desire to take part in that as part of the survey. So if you would like to have a bit of a deep dive into some of the more interesting issues that we pick up through the surveys, please do tick that box. In parallel to the evaluation, we are looking at options now to address some known challenges. Those known challenges shouldn't be a surprise to you. We have a pronounced, sustained increased demand, which is continuing to spike. Grant numbers and grant costs are going up, and this is consistent with all parts of UKRI and other funders. It is a feature of a pressured system. But to compound that, we have quite poor engagement with our peer review process at the moment, particularly with written reviews, which is causing problems in terms of the quality, the quantity and efficiency of the peer review system, and we need to address that. We know it takes a long time to fail. People tell us they want to fail quickly. They don't want to wait a year to find out the grant hasn't been funded. So that's something we would like to look at, which is our ability to move a little bit quicker. And that we have identified that we don't really have a very active approach to our portfolio stewardship, but to understand and develop balanced outcomes and to have a clearer view of what those balanced outcomes should look like. And then, as I've mentioned previously, we have evolving guidance frameworks at the UKRI level, which is driving change. So over coming months, we will be piloting an approach to address challenges and also the UKRI harmonisation drivers. It is likely we'll be evolving our responsive mode committee structures and operations more broadly. That may be on a slightly slower track, but we'll see how we go. We are going to be informed by particularly the community survey outputs from the responsive mode evaluation. We will use those results as soon as we can, and we'll be working with the committee chairing and membership pools as we go as well. We aim to be dynamic. This isn't going to be a kind of a one-up. If we implement things and we find they don't work, we will do something different. And we will endeavour to communicate incoming change clearly and quickly, because we recognise this is in a dynamic, pressure broader landscape. We need to get on with this. These things take time, and we need to start to enact change quickly. Otherwise, we find we're behind the curve in dealing with the sorts of issues that I've raised. So it is unlikely that we're going to be able to do a systematic consultation on future steps, but we are listening. At the last community webinar, I did a kind of temperature take through a Mentimeter survey, and the key things you told us, you value transparency and right to reply. We've heard that. Those are the two issues that came up time and time again. We have heard that these are features of the system that you value and wish to retain. What you didn't tell us is that you love the current system and please don't mess with it. You have, I think, given us mandate through various consultation modes to try new things. There is an appetite to do that. I'd also just like to give you an offer, which is I am providing the senior oversight for this work. And if you want to tell me what you think, by all means, please drop me a line. My email address is on the slide. If I get inundated, I don't promise to reply to you, but I do promise to read and take note of anything you submit to me. And just to give you a sense of time frame, we are looking to implement changes as quickly as possible. You can expect to see changes, I think, within a 12-month time frame, preferably a little bit sooner than that, within 2 to 3 rounds of responsive mode. And I will leave that there. Thank you.
I think we're moving on to Aidan now.
Thank you, Anne. I'll just bear with me a moment while I share my slides. Hopefully everyone can see those. I'm going to assume that you can, but if you can't, then if one of my colleagues could please just say so. So good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today presenting to you all. My name's Aidan Grimsley. I'm Senior Portfolio Manager for Fellowships and Early Career Researchers over at BBSRC. And as you know, I'm going to be presenting to you on our Fellowships programme today. So more specifically, I'm going to give a short overview of our current BBSRC Fellowship scheme, and I will try to keep that brief because I'm aware that many of you in the audience will be quite familiar with it. I'm also going to touch on how we've managed demand for the programme in 2025 and the support from the community that has helped us to do that. But the bulk of my presentation will be on our recently started review of our Fellowships programme, covering its objectives, its scope, and some initial stats and data. And I'm hoping that this is going to act as some food for thought for you, because we're going to close this section of the webinar by using Mentimeter to ask some questions of you, the audience. So our BBSRC Fellowships were formerly known as Discovery Fellowships, and they're early independence research fellowships, which means that they support individuals to explore, progress, and ultimately demonstrate their capacity for independent thought leadership. So in many cases, they act as a really critical stepping stone, either directly into a permanent academic role or onto a further fellowship that might support that establishment of independence. So we achieve this through our BBSRC fellowships by providing 3 years of funding for the individual to conduct their own research within a host laboratory and simultaneously pursue career development opportunities which are tailored to their own personal career development plans. Typically, our applicants are at a postdoctoral level, but our eligibility have actually changed over recent years. There's no time-bound criteria on number of years spent as a postdoc, and in fact, there's actually no requirement for a PhD at all. We welcome individuals from across the sector, including, for example, research technical professionals. So we invest around 9 million a year into this scheme, which typically supports around 15 fellows annually. And we expect to see strong support for the fellow from their host institution. That could be in terms of training, mentorship, career development, or things like providing dedicated office space, or even potentially conditional career opportunities at the end of the fellowship. Ultimately, it's all about demonstrating that the host is the best possible place to support the career development of the fellow, as well as undertake their particular research project. So this has become a very popular award, particularly within the last couple of years. In fact, this year we received 277 applications, which is over 50% more than the last year. And handling that many applications has posed a significant challenge to us, and it's necessitated that we innovate in the way that we handle those applications. This has meant some delays to our usual annual timeline that the community might be familiar with, and obvious uncertainty for applicants. So I just want to take a quick moment to say a big thank you to all of our applicants and the staff that have supported them for your patience, your understanding as we've worked towards a solution. And that solution has ultimately, through working with our community, been to settle on a triage process that assesses solely the science of these projects by considering just the vision and approach sections of their applications, followed by subsequent full peer review and interview stages. So to achieve that triage, we relied heavily on our existing reviewer community to do this, including Committee E and our pool of experts. I'm really pleased and in fact proud to say that there was no shortage of volunteers whatsoever to undertake this work. There were well over 750 independent triage assessments that took place, and that's resulted in ultimately 42 applications that have been taken forward for full review and interview. So I just want to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to all of our reviewing community, to everyone that reviewed or volunteered to review and enabled this to happen. Thank you. Understandably, there will be many applicants who are disappointed, and this is one reason why the work we're doing on our future approach to fellowships is so important. And we are looking very closely at what we can learn from this approach that's been implemented this year, especially from the feedback that we've received from the community, and how we can use those learnings to shape our strategy for managing demand for this scheme in the future. So we've very recently launched a review of our fellowships programme, and today's an excellent opportunity to share some of our early stage thinking about the objectives and the scope of this review, as well as share some initial data and consider other areas for further investigation. And as I said earlier, really keen to hear some of your thoughts about this at the end. So the purpose of the review is deceptively simple. Use it so that we can optimise our support for future leaders in bioscience research and innovation. To do that, we need to gather evidence on both the strengths and the weaknesses of our current fellowships offer. We need data and case studies showcasing, for example, career benefits, research impact, other tangible benefits like access to networks or collaborations, and ultimately the return on investment of these awards. But that's all looking inward. We also need to be looking outward at the broader bioscience research and innovation sector and truly understand the role that BBSRC fellowships will play in that space. So that means understanding the leadership development needs across the sector, as well as existing development provisions from other funders and research organisations, using that information to identify gaps and risks that we might reasonably address as a council. And this also relates quite strongly to UKRI's ongoing commitment to collective talent funding. Many of you may be aware of this, and the aim of that is to simplify and harmonise our talent funding across the councils. And UKRI will be providing further information on how this will affect fellowships in the near future. So that deceptively simple aim may require lots of data and cause us to ask many questions of our programme. Questions like, how should we position our fellowships? Are there particular career types or career stages that we should be focusing on supporting? Should we be providing more support for transitioning between sectors or collaborating across those sectors? And are there particular scientific disciplines we need to especially support? Questions like, how effective is the professional development aspect of these awards? We could be looking at the different training provided by the hosts and asking whether BBSRC should be offering further specific training. Looking at the value of our mentoring programme and asking whether we're doing enough to support the networking of our fellows. That's a few more examples. And we'll also be looking at whether our awards are appropriately structured. Are they of appropriate value and duration? And how can we ensure things like the independence of our fellows is consistently supported? And as I've mentioned earlier, are our assessment methods fit for purpose and are they efficient? And it's timely to be doing this now because of the huge demand for the awards, because of the known financial pressures across the sector, and those may potentially be leading to some constraints in institutional fellowship offerings. And it's also been some time since our last fellowships review, that was back in 2020. And as I mentioned earlier, there's the ongoing collective talent work as well. So I hope I've communicated a bit about what it is we want to achieve with the review, why we're doing it. And I'm going to move on and share with you some data from our current fellowships program. These are just going to be some very high-level takeaways, potentially much more detailed explorations to follow in the near future. So firstly, some data from our fellows' final reports, which show that our recently completed fellows are very complementary of the scheme. In fact, upwards of 80% were either very or extremely satisfied with their overall experience, and no respondents answered with the presented options of not at all or not very. And many fellows elaborate on this further in open questions, with a key positive theme being that this award gives them the time and opportunity to carve out their research niche, as well as develop competency in a variety of relevant skills, for example, grant management, knowledge of the peer review process, and leadership and management, to name a few. Obviously, we're quite proud of that statistic, and I think that we should be. But we do acknowledge there's room for improvement. And again, the fellows are forthcoming and providing us with constructive feedback, which we always like to see. And this frequently falls into two key themes. One being longer awards or opportunities for follow-on funding to better support that transition towards independence. And the other being requesting clearer expectations of how hosts should support their fellows, particularly around preserving a fellow's independence. One of the great things about this particular scheme is that we pair our fellows with a mentor from outside of their research organisation, and they can often provide a very different point of view and different type of support in comparison to an internal mentor who the fellows also have. And I'm really pleased to say that 67% of recently completed fellows said that their relationship with their BBSRC mentor was either very or extremely useful during their fellowship. Again, I think that's a really promising statistic, but we do need to acknowledge that it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Just under 10% say it wasn't particularly useful, and that might be something for us to dig into deeper. And this is one of the really brilliant things about this program, actually, is that these mentors are all either committee E members or prior fellows, and they do this mentoring out of a pure passion for supporting talented researchers in the biosciences. And I just think that's another excellent example of the wonderfully supportive community that we have in this space. So a big thank you to any of our mentors that may be listening. So another obvious potential indicator of success of our fellowships is the career tracks of our fellows, of course. And we're keen to explore long-term career destination information where that's available. But for now, I just want to share with you some data on where our fellows are employed immediately following their fellowship. So this data covers all fellows between 2021 and 2024, and over 40% of those were immediately employed in permanent or tenure track academic positions at a lecturer level or equivalent. Additionally to that, nearly 30% went on to secure a further fellowship position intended to support them in that next career stage of establishing their independence, perhaps setting up their first research team. That could be a fellowship like a UKRI FLF or a Royal Society University Research Fellowship. So taken together, that means more than 70% of our recent fellows have either achieved that academic independence or taken a significant next step towards achieving it, which is of course in line with a major objective of this scheme. But it's important to remember when thinking about how we want to support the porosity of individuals and their career pathways and career choices, that remaining 30% actually go on to work in or support the research and innovation sector in other really meaningful and significant ways, including influencing policy or working at funding organisations, working in industry, or even starting their own businesses. So one of our biggest changes in the fellowship space in the past 5 or 6 years was the discontinuation of the David Phillips fellowships. They offered support for that slightly later career stage of establishing independence, and they were discontinued largely due to the expectation that the UKRI FLFs would fill this role. And I'm pleased to confirm that the biosciences do actually do quite well out of that particular scheme. Between 5 to 14 UKRI FLF awards have been led by BBSRC annually. So where an award is led by BBSRC, that means it's considered to be primarily within BBSRC's remit. And they typically make up about 10% of all UKRI FLF awards every year. For comparison, BBSRC made just 3 to 5 David Phillips Awards annually between 2015 and 2020. And there are many more FLF awards where BBSRC acts as a secondary council. So these are the awards with some relevance to BBSRC's remits, but that can't be considered primarily within our remit. And this is, of course, reflective of how these awards support highly interdisciplinary research. And they make up around another 10% of all UKRI FLFs. So that is all to say that bioscientists are well represented within the UKRI FLF Awards, and we'll be taking that into consideration when thinking about how to best position our fellowships in a complementary manner. So something that's really vital to this work, which I've not yet touched on fully, is community consultation. This review isn't something that we should be working on behind entirely closed doors. We want to hear from the people that it's going to affect, from the community the awards are intended to serve, and from other experts in the field. And it's imperative that we seek that advice, that feedback, use it to shape this review. And we intend to do just that. That includes, for example, our committee, who have excellent expertise in assessing fellowships and implementations of these awards, as well as our other existing external advisory bodies, for example, our People and Talent Strategy Advisory Panel, and subgroups of that panel, who are comprised specifically of members of the postdoctoral and technical professional communities, which we know, of course, have a vested interest in these awards. And it also means having open conversations with our research organisations and our institutes, and being willing to share best practice and learn from other funders across the sector, for example, the Wellcome Trust, Royal Society, and potentially many more. And it, of course, includes our community of fellows, both past and present. And one example of this particular consultation comes from our most recent Fellows Conference in June, where Anne led an interactive session with our attendees. They were posed with 3 quite high-level questions around necessary skills and experience of our fellows, barriers, and BBSRC's role in mitigating those barriers. And it was a really lively discussion across a room of around 120 attendees, provided a really excellent opportunity for our fellows to provide honest thoughts and feedback, much of which fell into key themes. Once again, we saw this theme of inconsistency of support for fellows' independence across differing institutions, and again, this theme of a desire for longer awards or for fellowship-specific follow-on funding. We also saw comments around BBSRC needing to look at the eligibility of fellows to be able to hold concurrent awards alongside their fellowship, as well as requests for guidance on how to best negotiate for the best package of support during the application stage. And we'll be taking this feedback forward into the review. So continuing with the theme of community consultation, this is where we'd like to hear from you. And anyone on the webinar is welcome to take part if they wish to. What we're going to do is ask a few questions via Mentimeter. So if you visit the website menti.com on whatever your preferred device might be, you'll be prompted to enter a code. That code is 85524684, and that, I believe, will be provided in the chat shortly. And there'll be some questions that we'll be able to pose to you. Just bear with me a moment while we swap our screen share over, if you're able to share your screen, Catherine. Don't worry, the code will be back on screen shortly. Thank you very much, Catherine. So these questions are intentionally multiple choice, but not necessarily an easy choice. I think if there was an option for all of the above, many of us would pick it. So it's really about prioritizing. And the first question is around the ultimate goal of the fellowships. I can see there's lots of votes whizzing in already, which is excellent to see. Quite a few coming in then for developing the best research leaders. Absolutely agree with that. And there are many facets to what make a good leader. That's something we clearly need to explore. So independent thought leadership is, of course, incredibly important, but you need to be an excellent manager. You need to be able to help those other people in your team to rise up and develop as well. Seeing lots of votes as well for producing excellent research, absolutely. And that's not something we've shared much data on today, but we'll absolutely be looking at some of those research metrics, things like publications, patents, collaborations, databases, new technologies, etc. Permanent employment of fellows was another one. That's okay, Catherine, keep it on this one, thank you. But saw that permanent employment was up there as well. Glad to see that we've got some data to back that up, and we'll be looking at that further. So the next question then is, how should we focus our provision? Thinking about career stages and career types. I'll give you a moment to read through these questions and for some answers to come flooding in. So our support currently is focused primarily at that postdoctoral stage, at that stage of exploring your research independence. We're seeing a few votes come in many votes come in supporting that, as well as at the establishment stage, which is more aligned with the UKRI FLFs. So that's good guidance that we're on the right track currently. Seeing a number of votes as well for technical talent. This is something we absolutely want to keep an eye on. Of course, the technical development pathways are changing in many universities. We need to keep abreast of that. We need to think about how we can support people to transition into those pathways or develop through those pathways. And of course, there's lots available now across the sector from, for example, the ITSS or from Daphne Jackson technical fellowships. So we need to be mindful of those, as well as some folks coming in for very early career stage support, perhaps immediately after PhD. So maybe we need to start thinking about how we link our doctoral awards with our fellowships, and is there something we need to be doing around bridging that gap? That's really interesting. Thank you, Catherine. I'm happy to move on to the next one. So how would you change BBSRC fellowships? And I think we've seen some key themes coming through from our fellows, and I expect many of those will probably be reflected in the audience votes once again, but it'll be interesting to see which of these options you feel are most important currently. I'll just give you a moment to read through the questions. I do love watching these votes whiz in live and the pie chart update. There's something quite satisfying about it. So lots of votes for enabling fellows to hold concurrent awards, as well as provided dedicated follow-on funding, as we expected, based on the feedback from our fellows. We'll be looking at that quite seriously, as well as longer baseline awards, yeah. And further clearer expectations of the host, yeah. A much more mixed bag here. Well, a couple of clear winners that we expected, but fairly even split across all of the others. This is really fantastic. Thank you. I'm conscious I'm running out of time, so we best move on to the last one, if that's okay, Catherine. Now, this one won't be quite as visually appealing. This is really more for my benefit and for everyone watching at home, I must admit. But this is really an opportunity for you to just say whatever you want to. This is an open opportunity to make suggestions, maybe critique any of the comments I may have made. Probably won't leave this up for too long for everybody to read through, but please rest assured that I will be reading through these tomorrow. And actually this Mentimeter poll will be open till the end of the day. So if you come up with other ideas throughout the webinar or throughout the day, please feel free to pop them in here. I'm looking forward to reading through all of those. I'm quite conscious I'm potentially eating into our Q&A time now, so I better leave it there. But thank you very much to everyone for listening and taking part in the Mentimeter. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I'll hand back over, I assume, to Tim or Anne. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Huge thanks to our speakers for keeping to time. All slides and the recording of this webinar will be available on the BBSRC website. I will say that several times, so I hope you will make use of that and tell your colleagues. Also, we will be sending a follow-up email to all attendees, and we will use that to try and put links into the questions we have no time to answer, etc. And we will signpost you to where other information is available. So the Mentimeter is open all day. Please use it. And we're now going to go into the question and answer session with our executive. We have Anne Ferguson-Smith, our Executive Chair, Dr. Amanda Collis, who is the Executive Director, Research Strategy and Programs, and Jef Grainger, the Associate Director for Research Strategy and Programs as well. He has already presented. Thank you again for the questions you submitted earlier. I'm going to start with one of them to Anne. And it was actually quite a feature on some of the Q&As that came through on the Zoom webinar. And really, the question is, in the future, will there be a stronger emphasis on economic impact, Anne?
Thanks, Tim. Well, I mean, as you know, advances in bioscience are already delivering real-world benefits that improve lives and livelihoods, and economic impact is a core outcome of that. This is taxpayers' money that we're spending. So one of our jobs is to ensure that the discoveries and technologies that we make are deployed effectively to generate better societal outcomes, and we're doing that within our council and in collaboration with the other councils within UKRI. And we'll continue to do this. through building and supporting strategic partnerships. We can't do this on our own. Through investing in infrastructure, making sure we have a skilled and connected workforce, and through supporting the communication of the benefits that investing in bioscience delivers. I think we need to be doing that better, and particularly in the way we interact with government. Really, you know, this role of bioscience in changing our or influencing and impacting our national landscape and our economic growth is very important. So we are working closely with Innovate and other councils. We're engaging with our innovation campus partnerships, of course, also many of the global challenges that we're addressing are not obviously providing direct economic impact, but actually very indirect economic impact through improvements to lives and livelihoods. An example being some of the work we're doing on ultra-processed foods, for example. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Anne. We're going to draw on more of the questions that were submitted before the webinar. I'm going to turn to Amanda. And a heavy feature of the questions in advance of the webinar was the need for pilot data, which really needs to be secured before funding. So that asks the question, will BBSRC be offering seed funding, Amanda?
Okay, so I just want to check you can hear me clearly. Great. Okay. So this is a perfectly timed question. I can't help but want to point you towards the Pioneer Awards, the call that was launched 2 to 3 weeks ago, that's focused on bioscience discovery research. And that really has the purpose of providing funding to support early stage fundamental bioscience where preliminary data may well be lacking, but also to explore visionary and untested ideas. And where ideas and research ideas have the potential to open up new research paradigms kind of over the long term, but particularly wanted to emphasize it in the context of the question as it relates to preliminary data. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Amanda. While I still have you, we're all very aware in BBSRC of the government importance on engineering biology in the UK. And so does BBSRC have a vision for translational innovation and advancing Eng Bio?
So building on what Anne had said already about engineering biology and drawing particular attention to BBSRC's leadership on behalf of UKRI, working particularly in close partnership with Innovate UK and EPSRC, I think the answer to that question is yes. And to unpack that a little bit, of course, we have the current suite of investments made through the National Engineering Biology Programme. At the heart of that, the mission hubs and mission awards, but also programs on collaborative R&D and on entrepreneurship and acceleration of businesses out of research. Worth flagging at this point as well, and to pick up on points in Anne's presentation, the industrial strategy and in particular the digital and technology sector plan that makes a number of commitments as it relates to engineering biology and the whole kind of building out that kind of economic sector in a way. And that covers the National Engineering Biology Programme, advancing that, but also points around infrastructure and also points around networking and convening across the ecosystem and advancing international collaboration. So looking ahead, there's I think a clear route forward for translational innovation. We're still working through some of that. It's a little bit watch this space, but definitely do watch this space. And we'll be looking to advance that on the UKRI level, but with BBSRC in that leadership position.
Thank you. A question's just come through in the Q&A on Eng Bio. And it's asking, is Eng Bio largely for synthetic biology?
So I think that comes down to the definition of engineering biology and synthetic biology. And I would say that both are very much present in our portfolio, and both have that strong element of bioscience and engineering and often computer science in kind of collaborative partnership. I would say for engineering biology really wraps its arms around the whole kind of innovation sector. So it's not just about a research area, but it's thinking about, for example, the relevant kind of regulatory environment for new products and services. It's thinking about innovation, it's thinking about acceleration of kind of commercialization, new companies, etc. So that's how I would kind of create that kind of distinction, if that's helpful. I can't see the question at this point, but I hope that helps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to stick with you one more time. And actually, it's asking in the context of UKRI, people are still perceiving a challenge to get funding for truly cross-disciplinary research. Have you anything to say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it quite an interesting question, because I think from the experience of working within UKRI and seeing a whole suite of programs roll out over the last few years, it's useful to gain that kind of perception and that kind of feedback. What I would say in terms of cross-disciplinarity is that it is present in many, many different ways in terms of what we do and what we fund. Present in everything from responsive mode and responsive mode oriented kind of competitions, some of which run in councils, some of which are run at the UKRI level, but also around, we've heard from Aidan in terms of fellowships and the Future Leader Fellowships, etc. But so many of our managed mode and strategic research activities have interdisciplinarity or cross-disciplinarity at their heart. And so, whether it's new technologies, we were just talking about engineering biology, for instance, and synthetic biology, and whether it's areas such as tackling infections, areas such as clean growth and green growth, and so much of that has really been enabled through that multidisciplinary working across UKRI. So I would like to think that interdisciplinarity is alive and well and advancing within UKRI and within BBSRC, but equally it's really helpful to have that feedback because it makes it's a good prompt and a challenge to us. So thank you for the question and thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Jef, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks for your presentation. It has generated quite a few questions in the chat, and we're trying to answer as many live as possible. Actually, just as a comment to both Aidan and Jef, there were some praise for the manner in which we're now conducting our reviews and our consultations. And there was a plea not just to consult with researchers, but with university offices, with technicians, which you have noted and will be taken forward. Thank you. But Jef, there's a question that came through in advance, and it's back to interdisciplinary and back to discipline boundaries. And could you just have a few words on how BBSRC overlaps with MRC, which general health and development, specific disease? Could you have anything succinct to remind us of BBSRC and MRC? Thank you.
Yes, I do. Can you see me?
Yeah.
In a previous life, I was the head of bioscience for health at BBSRC, so I have some well-rehearsed boilerplate on this. BBSRC is interested in human health and human resilience and homeostasis. Resilience being resistance to challenge, so you don't break down. We're interested in understanding when resilience starts to break down, so when healthy states start to become dysfunctional states and how that happens. However, when you get along the path to looking at how a specific disease comes about or an intervention to it, that is not for us, that is MRC. So that is broadly how we define the distinction. Of course, there are overlaps, and we always encourage you, if you're not quite sure where to put your proposal, get in touch with us and we will tell you. Hopefully that's clear.
Thanks, Chair. Sticking with that, How about social science? Do you see a role for social science researchers in BBSRC schemes? I mean, transdisciplinary, co-design, etc.
Absolutely. In a broader sense, the story of UKRI has been around bringing the disciplines together to create multidisciplinary ways of working that are more efficacious than trying to do things on our own. Social science has often been, we often get accused of bolting it onto a bioscience solution and trying to push it. We are very much trying to change those sorts of relationships. So social science is informing the research that we undertake, not just a way of trying to sell the research we undertake to people that might want it. In particular, around health, again, looking back to my previous answer, we recognise that social status, social factors are critical to health outcomes. Clearly, if you want to understand how that comes about, you need to involve social science researchers. So absolutely, in principle, we very much see that the social sciences have a role in integrating with the biosciences to develop outcomes. In terms of mechanisms, all of our schemes allow for elements of multidisciplinarity, providing that you're not just submitting a social science proposal to BBSRC and that it is an integrated proposal. It should find a home either with us or with the ESRC, but there should be a home for the proposal, and we do encourage that.
Thanks again. Thanks, Aidan, for your presentation. There's a few questions coming through on the fellowships. I think there's a major theme emerging, and recognizing the financial status of many universities in the UK, and yet the need for a successful fellowship is for them to mentor and provide resource, etc., to them as well. There's a concern in the community that this might bias towards the universities and institutions that can afford such fellowships in order to provide that. Do you have, but I'm going to help you because, I mean, the timeliness of this webinar is before these consultations are actively happening, both on Jeff's part and on your part. So can I reassure everyone that all these issues in the Q&A will be taken forward in the consultation process? But I'd like to introduce Rob and Aidan from the fellowships team. Do you have any comments on that right now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something for us to consider as we consult with the community, and it just emphasises the need to consult broadly. Of course, consulting with, for example, our strategic partner universities, but also looking beyond that to other institutions who may be struggling more.
Thank you. And there's a huge hunger for fellowships to be extended to technical staff, to other people, to early career researchers. Can you reassure us this will be part of the review as well?
Yes, absolutely. We've recently established a subgroup of our People and Talent Advisory Panel dedicated to hearing the views of technicians. And this has led to some recent changes in, for example, the way that we conduct peer review and some eligibility changes. And it's absolutely within scope to be consulting with them and more broadly on fellowships and the role that they could play in developing technicians. So we will be taking that forward as part of the review.
Thank you very much. Going back to the financial situation in many universities, do any panel members, can you say what how UKRI is recognising this, or any steps towards it, or is that something we'll point you to in the follow-up email?
Maybe I can comment. I mean, I think certainly UKRI is very conscious of the financial sustainability of the higher education sector, as is government, in fact. And I think that's and it's a constant source of communication, interaction, and engagement. It's featuring in discussions around REF, discussions around place, etc. And so, and in fact, the discussions around research sustainability. Of course, there's that educational component to it as well, sitting between the two government departments, which is, I'm not saying it complicates things, but it creates a broader discussion, and we are engaging with the sector, with government, at the highest level. within councils.
Thank you. Sticking with responsive mode, Jef, there was quite a few issues about whether we go to open calls or stick with our deadlines. I've been in the Research Council's 35 years, and when there's a deadline, many academics recognise it and submit to it. There might be a time after we remove deadlines that people will submit applications when they want to or when they need to, importantly. Do you have any views on that issue?
Only that this is something that we are under pressure as part of UPRI harmonisation to move towards. We recognise that there are going to be impacts, and in whichever direction you harmonise something, there will be people that aren't happy with it and it challenges existing ways of working. That's going to be inevitable. We don't know what the impact will be, and it rather depends also on the way that we implement this. If we do implement it, we can hide the deadlines that currently exist. That's a very easy way of doing it. We are aware that means that our committee members will get a lot of phone calls asking when the deadlines are. Or we can do something which is more radical around kind of more dynamic matching, which is much harder to implement but may have more profound impacts. We may start with one and move to another. I think this is part of the challenge we face, is getting things done quickly, but also getting things done in a way that is meaningful and impactful and doesn't have unintended consequences. So I'm not going to make any promises at this stage about how we do it, but just to reassure you, this is something we are now looking at very closely.
Maybe I can come in on this as well as an active researcher who empathises with all of you out there who are, as Tim says, there are positives and more challenging aspects to this change. From my perspective, deadlines are my friend. And I think about, removal of deadlines with a little bit of shock horror, and in particular, perhaps more importantly, it enables researchers to plan their workforce effectively going forward. What are the implications for us as researchers in that changing context? And that's exactly what Jef is referring to as we look at the deeper implications of such changes. There are inconsistencies across research councils in how this operates, and so learning from the best practices and the experiences of the other councils is going to be very important, but recognising that different disciplines have different cultural heritage within their structure. So it's not just, it's a complicated thing to be thinking about, but something that is absolutely at the forefront of our minds.
Thanks. The other issue in responsive mode, which is coming through, is resubmissions. And again, it's two sides of a coin. We have if success rates are at the level they are, there are many applications of high quality which are not being funded. If we allow resubmissions, that enhances the number of applications we get again and further reduces the success rate. Does anyone on the panel have a view on that and reassure us that this will be part of the assessment and evaluation of responsive mode?
Sorry, Tim, can you summarise that again for me?
There's a lot of questions and issues and thoughts on allowing resubmissions in responsive mode.
Sorry, I was busy trying to answer something on the chat. Yes, it's the one thing that everybody wants us to look at is resubmissions policy. There is a reason we have the current resubmissions policy, which is the evidence base suggested that resubmissions do not fare well and just waste people's time. However, there may, that we've had the current policy for a long time. And we do need to review, particularly recognising the impact on career entrants when their first grant gets killed and their big idea can't come back. We do understand that. I think there is something around the potential for more iterative approaches to peer review to manage both demand and to drive up the quality of outcomes, but we need to implement anything quite carefully because there are potentially unintended consequences. And what we don't want is a churn of applications that are currently sort of coming back to us and not really going anywhere. So that is definitely something I'm.
Thank you. Going to shift slightly. There's been questions about other government departments, and yes, we're funded by DCIT and work carefully with them. There was a specific reference to the Department of Health and Social Care, but obviously other departments such as DEFRA and for myself, the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, etc. Can the panel explain to attendees our approach to working with other government departments. I know Anne, Amanda, Jef, and I all talk to many departments all the time. Can I ask Anne first?
Thanks for that question. So within BBSRC and UKRI in general, these conversations with other departments happen at a range of different levels, all designed to ensure close collaboration and bidirectional connectivity between both the research funding, but also policy regulation, forward-looking and priorities. So I meet regularly with the chief scientific advisors of multiple departments, and in addition, have regular meetings with the strategy team within DCIT. I mean, as one, in addition, we have quarterly meetings in particular theme-oriented areas with particular government departments, notably DEFRA, DHSC. I interact with the CSA there also, even though actually DHSC predominantly interacts with the MRC, and often our connections are connected with them, particularly around things like data, etc. But I mean, I'll hand over to Amanda next.
Yeah, so I can add to that, and then I might ask the Jef to share this question. To add that, I think, as Anne's described there, her regular engagements into key government departments. But I would say that underpinning that is a kind of almost like that connectivity is a stick of rock in a way through the organisation in terms of, for example, working closely and connecting with policy officials in DEFRA, for example, in areas around kind of animal health or plant health, or indeed particularly with colleagues in DCIT in terms of engineering biology, for instance. Also to flag that, just looping back up to our kind of strategic advisory system, and particularly to BBSRC Council, we also have kind of CSA representation, including the new CSA for DEFRA around the table there. Jef, over to you on.
Yeah, and I was actually in the process of trying to answer this question, which is why I failed to hear the previous one. Just on DHSC, specifically in the area of infectious disease, we actually have very active interactions with DHSC now. You may be aware that we're in the middle of what's called Exercise Pegasus at the moment, which is effectively a pandemic government war game to determine our preparedness for the next pandemic when inevitably it comes. And we are playing that game right now. So I'm in meetings with DHSC. So those interactions are increasingly coordinated. We have a pandemic research framework now, which all of UKRI, through the medium of currently the Tackling Infections UKRI theme, is interacting with all of the key health and social care departments of government, including DEFRA, importantly. So just to reassure, we very much are engaged, and I think in a way which is very different to where we were even 5 years ago before COVID.
Yeah, and maybe I can come in on two other connections that I forgot to mention. One is that the executive chairs all interact with the Minister. Patrick Vallance, when he came into government, actually knew all the executive chairs of all the research councils, which I think is unprecedented. And the other area is working with our national research organisations, which actually is a collective of all the institutes and national capabilities across the UK. And of course, those investments have multiple interactions with multiple government departments. In fact, this is not necessarily been aware of this. And so we're harnessing that information, and that's helping that connectivity and relationships between UKRI investments and different government departments.
And I just want to quickly follow up as well as somebody that spends quite a lot of their time in a devolved administration in Wales, but to recognise also the importance of that connectivity, the devolved administrations, and how we work, for example, through one of the Scottish Government kind of advisory networks, and also meet regularly, and often actually at the programme level, for example, the Land Use for Net Zero programme, supported through Building a Green Future, where we work very closely with the devolved administrations as well as with UK government representatives.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our panel session. Huge thanks to those who submitted questions in advance and used the Q&A function. There are still many questions, but also comments and thoughts for Jef to take away in the responsive mode evaluation. There was feedback on the funding service, TFS, feedback and ideas on demand management, on the selection of experts, panels, committee members, reviewers, and also on remits. Animal science was mentioned, and also the reviewing process. Jef, just reassure us these are all part of the evaluation that's going ahead.
Yeah, I can't possibly respond to all of the questions I've had, but most of these things are things I'd like to reassure you we are aware of and are thinking about, although whether or not we can satisfy you in our interventions remains to be seen.
Thanks. And the way we move to deadlines, etc. as well. Thank you. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our webinar. I'd love to thank our expert panel. I'd like to thank our speakers for keeping to time. I would like to thank our technical people that ran this webinar. If anything went wrong, I didn't notice. So thank you to the technicalities of this. Thank you for participating. And so you will receive a follow-up email. We will be putting links in that to thank you. The Mentimeter on fellowships is open all day, and there will be other opportunities for you to comment and input through our email system. But thank you for the interactive sessions. And I'd also just like to say that the slides and this webinar will be on the BBSRC website for you to look at in the future. And we will be back hopefully next year. There was a comment that, are we going to do a Round Britain series of live events? I remember the days when we did that, when Zoom, pre-COVID, when Zoom wasn't our modus operandi. We'll take that on board and think about it. But thank you for joining. We have maintained quite a lot of people on this Zoom, so thank you for sticking with us. Anne, do you have anything to say as the final word? Thank you.
Well, just actually, I've been following the Q&A and the feedback and the comments. These are really rich, really helpful, and we're very grateful actually for your participation and your commitment to this dialogue with us, which is so important to us. I'd also like to I'd also like to echo Tim's thanks to the tech team at Harwell. We're in Harwell today. And they've been amazing, and so we're very grateful. Thanks to Amanda and to Jef and to Aidan and to others from the team who are here with us on this webinar. And particularly thank you to you, Tim, for being such a wonderful chair and for guiding us so tranquilly, actually, through this event. And so. Thanks to everybody. We look forward to seeing you on the Funway and interacting further on the many challenges and opportunities that we've shared with you today. So thank you very much indeed.